Good evening guys, I'm Chris and welcome back to this Wednesday's episode of Rift Amps. Right, one last update on the Laney clip because it's all back together now and it's working fine and it's great, but I removed the original broken dual light and I fitted just temporarily because we couldn't find any replacements. Just a different colour one, slightly square. Gave it a chrome bezel so it kind of looks roughly correct. But that's all I've got. And then when the customer eventually found one, we can easily swap that out. It's it's only 2 wires. It's not difficult, easy job. But at least it means that hole is now no longer open. Of course, you've got mains voltage just the other side of that, so you've got to be careful. So that was how I was going to leave it. No problem. But then a lovely chap called Neil got in touch because he said, I think I've got one. I think I've got one. And he sent to me in the post, not just one, but 2 correct size dual lights. One's got slightly more patina than the other, so we'll probably fit the one that's most appropriate for the amp. But they are absolutely correct. The right ones for the amplifier. There you go. Absolutely perfect. Where's the old one gone? There it is. Exactly the same size as the one that's still in the amplifier. So just going to swap my one out and fit this one. It's probably worth just chucking some voltage through it to check it works beforehand. And then that will put that back to stock. How cool is that? The other issue, which let me just put these away, I'll show you, is if you remember from the initial assembly or disassembly on the amplifier, is that the chassis is not actually held in at all. It's not secured to the cabinet. It's actually free to move. Because there are no, that's heavy, chassis mounting bolts or anything like that. They were missing and not there, and as you can see, someone else has attempted to try and fix this at some point. Now, the customer doesn't want the chassis to move. I get that, that's fine, but I'm going to pull the chassis out again and I'll show you what the issue is with the chassis, and then it kind of answers as to why this has been done. Okay, so we're looking down the bottom. Hopefully it'll be easy for you to see. It has the original chassis has these M4 captive nuts inside the chassis. However, they've all worked their way loose, and so they all spin. Can I get in and show you? They all rotate. Hopefully you can see that one is rotating in the hole, and all 4 of them are the same. Now, what would happen is if we put an M4 bolt through there, it'd screw in a certain distance, probably bind up because it's full of rust and all the sort of stuff like that. But if it was in the cabinet, you then won't be able to get it out because there's no counteracting force on your unscrewing motion. So then the chassis is completely locked into the cabinet. So we don't want that. And look, you can see someone else has just run some, drill some holes and run some screws or something through the chassis, both at the bottom and the top there, just to try and hold this thing in place. And that's why you've got the corresponding holes on the cabinet. So what are we going to do? How are we going to secure this in? Well, if I press these things out, I could drill and put some larger ones in. I think I've got some M6. I think they're called PEM nuts, aren't they? Here they are. There you go. So what they look like. So I could replace those and enlarge those. I could, that's one option. But they're only going to fail again eventually. They're only going to fail again, which we don't want to happen. So I need to have a good think about what to do. If I had a 10mm square punch, I could just punch out a single, well, I could punch these out, fit cage nuts, which is what I normally use, in there. And then we could just use M6, which would probably be better sized hardware for the size and weight of this chassis. But I'm going to have a good think. This material be thick enough that I could just... No, I can't tap it. I was thinking I could probably drill and tap it, but it's probably just slightly too thin. Thinking out loud on the internet. Yeah, look. 1.4mm, which is, 55 thousandths thick, approximately. If it was 2mm, maybe. Bear in mind, this doesn't hang from the ceiling of a cabinet, it's only sitting on the floor, so those would only be to locate it into place, not to support its weight. But no, I'm not happy with that. I'm going to have to think of a solution. Let me know in the comments down below what you would do on a vintage amplifier to fix this. Do we attempt to replace these? Do I come up with a new mounting solution or something else? Right, Q&A time. We're going to start this week with an email. I know I normally do the YouTube comments and questions, but we've had a really good and interesting email from a chap called Will, who says, "Hi Chris, love the channel. I tune in every week. I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm working on a chassis layout in DIY-LC and wondered if there's a better way to draw a totem pole filter cap arrangement. The way Fender does it feels cumbersome and awkward. I'm sure there's a better way. Thanks." Yes, absolutely. Have a look at this. Before I give you the answer, I will just do a quick recap on what a totem pole stack is, and what they're designed for, and why they're used, and all that kind of stuff. So here is the reservoir stage in the B+ rail of an AB 763 black panel Fender twin reverb. So coming from the rectifier diodes, we come up to this point and we've got two 70 microfarad caps in series. And you see they're both 350 volts each. And they are, both of these, bypassed by two 220k 1 watt resistors. And we call these balancing resistors. And the reason those balancing resistors are used is to help spread the voltage load across each capacitor. So Fender wanted, at this point here, they calculated, or I should say, a certain level of capacitance that they wanted for this reservoir cap. And they wanted somewhere between 30 and 40 microfarads. 33 is the modern value, but because of the high voltage at this point, there weren't capacitors that were rated for that kind of voltage. So one way to do it is to use what we call a totem pole, or a totem pole stack. And that's simply where you put two capacitors which are roughly twice the value that you want in series with each other. And what happens then is the voltage rating sums together. So now we've got a 700 volt capacity here, or handling. But two caps in series will become 35. And the sum for that, if you're not aware, is capacitor 1 times by capacitor 2 divided by capacitor 1 plus capacitor 2. Well, that's easy enough. So capacitor 1 plus capacitor 2 is 140, and capacitor 1 times capacitor 2, 4,900 divided by 140 gives us our 35 microfarad. Okay, see how that works? So now here, the rectifier diodes are seeing 35 microfarads of reservoir capacitance there. However, we've now got 700 volts worth of voltage rating. Fantastic. And these resistors, which are alongside them, are used to help spread that voltage across them evenly or equally. Choose whichever word you want. So to answer your question though, is there an easier way to lay this out on a board or in a chassis than the way that most people did it? So we'll start with the way Fender did it in their amp. Was like this. Now these capacitors are quite large and quite long, so you're not physically going to do them in series one after the other like this. What you're going to do is have one, so here's your red wire in from your rectifier into the positive end of this 70 microfarad cap. The negative end, you're following on both sides, is connected to the positive end of this cap and then to ground. So from rectifier to ground. Okay, and as you can see, we've got these two 220k resistors in parallel with each capacitor, helping to distribute that voltage evenly. And that's how Fender did it. So they fixed the issue by, rather than having the two caps literally in a long line, they've done them side by side, but now we've created extra space going this way because of having to find space for these two resistors. And in a world of efficiency and in a world of trying to improve things all the time, the question you've asked is a good one. Is there a better way to do that, to arrange these that take up less space, use less wires, use less eyelets, takes up less space that way and that way? Well, yes, there is. So if we go back to our drawing, let's look at these two balancing resistors. They're in series with each other and they're in parallel with the two capacitors which are in series with themselves. And the way Fender have done it is this first one here, one end is connected to the positive end of this cap, here it is, and the other end is connected to the negative end of that cap, here it is. Same goes for this resistor. Now, problem with schematics is, well, the good thing about schematic is they show you where things are electrically connected. They don't show you how things are physically laid out. So you can look at that in two ways. You can do what Fender did and connect the things as the way you'd really see it, or, and this is my favorite thing, you can use the left part of your brain or the different part of your brain and say, well, actually, you could say, bear with me, that this resistor here is connected to the positive end of this cap, but also to the positive end of this cap. This resistor is connected to the negative end of this cap and the negative end of this cap. That's true. I'm not lying. I'm not saying any falsehoods there. That's what's happening. This resistor is connected to both positive ends. This resistor is connected to both negative ends. If it wasn't for this line here, we couldn't say that fact, right? So why don't we look at this differently? Rather than having these two capacitors facing the opposite directions and therefore having the positive and the negative on the same side of the board, could we reverse one and reconfigure it? Yes, we can. And this is how you do it. Like so. Both capacitors facing the same orientation. We've got one of our 22k resistors connecting both of our positive ends of our caps together. the other one connecting the negative ends together, and all we need is one underboard connection connecting here to here. This is still from my rectifier, from rect, and here's my ground. Let's look at the schematic. Let's check we've got it right. From the rectifier into the positive end of one cap. A 22k resistor going to the positive end of this cap. Yes. A 22k resistor going from the negative end of this cap to the negative end of this cap. Correct. And our wire there, connecting both of them up. And that's how you do it. Really simple. Right, all done then. All back together. Dual light fitted. So now we've got the nice matched pair. I managed to, with the mounts, I'll just rock it on its back. It's probably easier to show you this way. I managed to repress the original nuts into place, and then what I did is I pinned them into position so they're not going to move anymore. And I put quite a bit of torque into them just to make sure they wouldn't rotate, and they don't. So I've managed to get some M4 hardware in place. The only one that's weird is I had to use a larger washer here because the hole was much larger, so to get that secure in place. But that chassis is now nice and tight. I fitted some feet. I had some spare feet hanging around. Gave the cabinet a quick wipe over. But yeah, we can now call this one done. So as with every amplifier that I service and repair, you always get your bag of bits back. So all of his old caps are in there, the two sockets that I replaced, the old resistors, the old dual light, and the two leaky mustard caps. So they're all in there. That's now job done, and that's ready for him to collect whenever he's ready. L Cap says, how is the Music Man going? Looking forward to an update, unless I've missed it. Very interested in it, as I have a 212 150 watt version that seems very good at blowing fuses. Well, the Music Man is there on the shelf. I am awaiting delivery of some parts, so until they turn up, it's going to sit there. It's got some very strange cap sizes, both in value and physical size, and so yeah, I'm just waiting for the right bits to arrive, then I can crack on with that. I've actually got a 130 212 HD out the front, awaiting service, so perhaps that's the same as your model. I don't know. You say yours was 150, but that one's a 130. So was there a 130 and a 150? I don't know, but yeah, that one's out the front. So we will be checking that over at some point. It's in the queue. I don't know when I'll get to it, but yeah, that's the Music Man update. Right, this is the Totem Mark III, the one that came in with the Laney and all the other bits and pieces, and I've been working through it because it's proving to be a bit of a faff, this thing. It's not playing ball, and not in the fun way anyway. So I pulled this schematic off the internet. It's mostly right. There's a couple of values that are slightly different, but okay, cool. I think it's only two that are different. The pedal's got an issue in that it has low output, and as you can see on the scope, the yellow is the output, and I'm just scoping with the purple probe on the output of the fuzz control, so roughly halfway through, just about here. And sometimes both signals will drop out. Oh look, both signals will drop out. Sometimes only one, like the yellow one is now, and sometimes it works absolutely fine. No rhyme or reason. I thought I found the cause of the low output, which was the so I've got it here, the 2000 picofarad, or it's actually 2N2, this cap here, because I was getting signal up to this point but nothing this side. But what was bizarre is the fuzz control was dumping all the signal to ground, but now it's not. So again, lots of weird gremlins and ghosts in this pedal. So I've been working my way through it, and sometimes it seems you can't get this thing to play up as hard as you try. Sometimes you just look at it slightly funny and it'll play up. So currently we've got no output, but we've got signal going halfway through. If I take the end of my screwdriver and I just gently tap the volume control, it comes back. Okay. And if I tap it again, sometimes it'll go away. That's the treble bass control. That's the fuzz control. So now it's working. Now it's got output, and when it's in this state, that it will drop out now, I can turn the controls and you can see the output gets affected. So that's the treble and bass control. That's volume. Down to 0, all the way back up. This is your fuzz control in the middle. All right. So things are working. But in a minute, it will just drop out again, and I can't get it to do it consistently. If I flex the board, I wobble components. You get too many. You think you find out a diagnostic direction to go down, a place in the circuit where it seems to be playing up, and then it will just say, no thank you, that's not the right place. If I turn it oh, dropped out there just as I rotated it. There you go. Rotate it back, comes back, rotate it in. It's just bizarre. We've done the tug test on all the wires and the flex test. Oh, now it's gone. What do we do? What did we do? And it's back. You see, it's absolutely crazy, this thing. So I'm still working through it. It's very, very strange. Yeah, I don't know. Problem when you get too many false positives and you get too many false negatives and you get problems that are intermittent, but at least they are consistently intermittent. And what I mean by that, it's always in the same place in the circuit, but it comes and goes. This seems to mess up. At the moment, you've seen the yellow trace drop out, but I have managed to get... Here you go, yellow's gone again. But I have managed to get the purple trace to drop out as well. So what is going on? What is going on? For such a simple circuit, right? It's only 3 transistors and a handful of components. It's just bizarre. So I'm working through it. It's taking up far too much of my time. You wouldn't believe I've already spent 2.5 hours on this. I still haven't got to the bottom of it. So it's not all fun and games when you do this job. Sometimes these things are just infuriating. So I'll keep going. Channel member Ollie Knight Smith says those JBLs are super rare here in the UK. We're talking about my Super Reverb, the one that Josh kept the speakers in. No, kept the speakers for himself, and I bought the rest of it. I hope the sound is worth the wait. Couple of questions for you for the Q&A. Okay. 1, if you could only play one amp for the rest of time and it has to be a Rift model, what are you going to choose? Then the same question, but if it had to be any other amp that isn't a Rift, 1 amp for the rest of the time and it has to be a Rift model, it would be... so essentially you're asking me what is my favourite amp in the Rift lineup. And that would be the one that I'm currently building, which is an Ainsley Lister Signature. That is my favourite. Am I doing the right? Yeah, that one. That is my favourite. It is my favourite. I absolutely love it. I love building them. I love playing them. I love testing them. I love hear Ainsley playing them live. They're fantastic. I would like to build. Well, I would like. It's an EL34 amp. and it only does what it does because of the way it's configured and stuff. So you can't really change the recipe that much. But I was always tempted in doing a KT66 version just for myself, just to hear what it'd sound like. I'm sure it wouldn't do, it'd move it too far away from what it is, but it might sound cool. So yeah. But yeah, to answer your question, if I could only play one Rift amp for the rest of the time, it would be an A's Lister Sig. Same question, but it had to be any other amp that isn't a Rift. Yeah, it would be a 1963 6G16 Brown Vibroverb. That'll be the amp. You can do everything with that thing. You can do everything with it. It's got the best tremolo, it's got the best reverb, it's got the best tone. 2x10s always sound good, especially in that format. Yeah, an original, but I haven't got 15 grand, so I'm not buying one. 2. Can the PR18 run 6L6s with a rebias, or would it need bigger transformers? The 18 would need a replacement power transformer because it doesn't have the capacity to run 6L6s, but the output transformer will quite happily run them. If you want the 6L6s, then we do the 35 watt as well. But yeah, no, you would need a replacement transformer if you want to run 6L6s in the PR18. Right then, back time we had a look at this Vibrosonic Reverb. Now, for some of you, you'll know what this is, but for others, you may not have heard of the Vibrosonic Reverb, which was built between 1972 and 1981, as a lot of the quirkier silver panel stuff was. Essentially, it is a twin reverb, but rather than having two 12-inch speakers, it's got a single 15-inch. That's the only difference, really. It's an Totem output, and this one's got the EV speaker in, which weighs as much as a small star. So yeah, anyway, so this one came in, as most of you will remember, with the Laney and the high watt I still need to look at, and the old Gibson Tweed amp. So the complaint on this one is that one of the 6L6s started to rev play, it went bang, and so he wants me to go through it, check it's all okay, and give it a service as required. So let's get ourselves into this thing then. Pretty standard, whoops, where have you gone? Here you are. Pretty standard layout. I'll get a bit higher for you, maybe. So 2 channels, as you normally find. On the normal channel, 2 inputs, bright switch, got a volume, treble, and a mid control alongside the bass. Vibrato channel, bright switch as well, volume, treble, middle, bass, reverb, speed, intensity. This is the later model, so it's got the master volume, and which has got the push-pull boost on it as well. On the rear, it's an import model, so we've got or actually we call them import models, Fender call them export models. It's got the voltage selector switch, which unlike my Super Reverb, appears to be working okay. Fuse on standby. We've got a speaker plug here. It's missing the Fender cap, but looks like somebody's filled it with some gunk. Some wax or something to help protect it. Not the end of the world. At least it's functional. He's got his own reverb, his own aftermarket foot switch for the reverb and tremolo. It's got, oh look, I found the original one in here as well, which looks like, I assume it's original, somebody has modified to run LEDs so you can tell which one is on and off. Although they do appear to have been disconnected. There you go. So I wonder which one he wants me to use on it. Going on to the back, we've got the hum balance control here, but this one doesn't have the bias balance circuit on the rear. So I wonder if that's internal. I can't remember on these. Come over here. Last had a safety inspection at November 2023. Good news. Unfortunately, it's covering up the serial number. which is A739202. Right, well that's that then. So there's that EV I was telling you about. Big old speaker. This amp looks like it's got a choke, so it's not the 135 watt ultra linear model. It will be just the 100 watt version. Nice and loud anyway, especially with that speaker. Just looking on top, you probably can't see, but this chassis mount is loose, and so is that one. So I wonder what's going on there. It's got the tilt back legs, which for combos like this, I always think is a good idea. Mainly because it means when you tilt the amp back, the sound is going to project up into the room and not directly at your customers' faces. So there we go. So I'm going to pull the chassis. We'll give it a usual inspection, as we always do. We'll stick it on the test bench and see what's going on. Although I can already see that there is one missing 6L6, obviously the one that went bang. So anyway, let's pull this panel off and give it a good look. Rusty Strings says, "Hi Chris, excellent content as always. Thank you. I was re-watching your Bonfire Night special on the Ampmaker SE5A. I built one of these many years ago and I never thought the bias was right. So, inspired by your video, I had a look at it. With the stock 150 ohm bias resistor, it is biased at 50%. Bear in mind this is a cathode biased amp, right? To get it into the 80% zone that I managed, I needed to fit a 68 ohm resistor, which seems a bit of a departure from stock. Also, the screen was 2 volts higher than the air plates, and to get that at least 1 volt less meant going from a 2K2 to a 3K3. Yeah, the amp now sounds far better as a result. Right, bias it properly, they sound better. But are these values any cause for concern? Yeah, 68 ohms does seem quite low. Double check you haven't got because those transformers have got the 2 voltage taps, not the high voltage taps, haven't they? I think so. Double check you're not running the wrong B plus. And do a full voltage map. Make sure you get everything right. Make sure everything is roughly where it should be. The other thing I would say is if your valve is needing that much current through it to get it to a reasonable operating point, then is it that valve is just reaching the end of its life? Do you get roughly the same bias readings with a brand new out of the box replacement valve? Something to check. But yeah, I can't remember what value I needed to fit in the end. I'll have to go back and watch the video. But yeah, that's to be that far off the stock value might indicate further problems. So get checking. One thing you can do is pull the valve, do your voltage measurements. Obviously, stick the valve back in, check them again, see if you're getting anything strange going on. But yeah, I would be doing some basic further investigation, fully understanding what the amp should be, what it is now, and why it's acting the way it is with that valve in position. Also, any recommendations for hand tools, nippers, pliers, etc.? Well, I use Knipex side cutters, small ones. This is model number 7861125. 7861125. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, these are fantastic. Absolutely brilliant for amp building. And I will be getting myself another one. Pliers is something I've been fighting with for a very long time. Very, very long time. I'll tell you why. So I like to use needle nose pliers. These are approximately 2.5–3 inches jaw size, jaw length. These are cheap ones. These are really, really cheap ones. probably made in the Far East. But the reason I like them is the jaws themselves aren't too grippy. So, you know, it holds stuff with more pressure, but it doesn't grab too much if you need to go along a wire like that. They still have a nice level of slip, which when I'm working on stuff is fine. And crucially, they've got the return spring, so they're naturally open. You squeeze and they bounce back open, and that's the way I like to work. So regular channel viewers will remember when I got these side cutters from Knipex, I also went and bought their long needle nose. Now these are great, but they don't have a return spring, whether it's a leaf or coil spring. So you kind of have to do it yourself, which gets annoying. But also they're too good. They're too good. The level of grip on the inside is so strong that I just can't work with them. They grab too much when you're working laterally. So, and unfortunately, they don't make one that's got a return spring. Otherwise, I would simply just polish the insides up to get the level of grip I wanted, and use these instead. So I'm still using my cheapies. And because, you know, you get used to your hand tools, and when you change, it messes everything up. So I'm still using these. They're still great. Eventually they will die, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. But if anyone has any recommendations for long nose pliers like this, roughly 2.5–3 inches length, workable area with a return spring, small handle size, so they're not too chunky in the hand, so you don't get fatigue as well when you're working, please let me know. I'd love to check them out. Andy Davis says, ever consider getting an IEC socket adapter plate laser cut or 3D printed to accommodate a standard IEC and cover the gaps? Yes, I have. Yes, I have thought about that. Now, I do need to get myself a 3D printer. So actually, while we're on the subject of recommendations, if anyone has a recommendation for a tabletop 3D printer, bed size only needs to be, I don't know, 25 by 25 centimeters. It doesn't have to be huge, just so I can, you know, print small stuff off. That's got good factory support, isn't overly complicated. I only need to print in one colour, so black probably. I actually want one to print stuff for the race car, but I guess for riff stuff as well, if it's helpful. Then the one I've looked at is the bamboo something or other. The base model seems to be good enough. So I am looking into getting myself a 3D printer, which should help fix that. But speaking on that Fender amp, customers decided to go with a hardwired mains cable anyway, so we're going to put all the original stuff back in, just not hook it up, which fixes that issue. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a quick fabrication solution, I guess you call it, for stuff like that. So I haven't got to go up to the metal shop to get stuff done or pay somebody else to print it off for me. So yeah, but yeah, good suggestion. I have thought about it, but I really need to stop spending money on stuff that I really don't need. So yeah, 3D printer, it's on the want list, but it's not yet on the need list. So we'll see if that changes in the future. But yeah, there you go. Right, can we see? We can see. Okay, so quite clean in here. Not bad. Not bad at all. We can see over here why the chassis mount was loose, because this clip has moved all the way over. Okay. There we go. That one's okay. This one over on this side is also Okay, we're good. We're good again. So overall, inside, pretty nice. It's had its electrolytics on the board replaced with the filter bias cap. So the bias cap, can't even talk now. The electrolytic on the bias board and the one coming off the pot here. It is a bias balance circuit. That's fine. But overall, it's quite nice. It looks like it's been, I hate to use the phrase, but tastefully maintained. Good quality components. Nobody's been in here shotgunning stuff. Overall, pretty nice condition. Looks like we might have a couple of potentiometer swaps, but maybe not. Can I see the date codes on them? Not without my glasses. But yeah, that's what we've got here. There's the internal chassis number sticker, which just fell apart in my hands. Look, we shall keep that safe. Anything else to report? Not on this side. Let's flip it over and we'll have a look at the transformers and underneath the doghouse. Catmandu commented on quite an old video now from, sorry, Catmandu, not Catmandu, a really old video. It was actually when I had Noisy Josh's blonde amps in and with the reverb unit. And he said, one of those reverb units is on my want list. Kind of wish a small UK amp builder would start making them, or at least do a run of them. Well, here's the problem with 6G15 reverb units, is they are, in your mind, it's a reverb unit, so it's quite cheap. The problem with them is that they are essentially a 5 watt, 3.5 watt guitar amplifier in itself, with all the bits that guitar amps include. Transformers, pots, switches, valve sockets, bits and pieces, all of it in there. But rather than driving a speaker, it just drives a reverb tank. And so it costs the same as a guitar amp. Whenever people ring me up and ask me all the time about, you know, would I build one? And I give them the price and they almost fall off their chair because they're not cheap, especially if you want to do them properly. So, yes, I can do them. I'd love to do some. I've actually got, I did design a Rift version. So something that does a bit more than the Fender style ones. But again, they're not cheap. They're not affordable. And so if you want one, you're going to have to pony up and pay it. Because, I'm certainly not going to lose money on them. But yeah, they are possible. They're just expensive, so that's why you rarely see amp builders actually doing runs of them, unless, of course, they're being made in the Far East or they're cutting corners somewhere. Right, overall, it's quite clean, this chassis. Very nice condition. I mean, nowhere near the mess of my Super Reverb, right? But yeah, this is nice. It's not quite the condition of the Pro Reverb that we had in the Mint one, but overall, it's very nice. So this transformer here is 8th week of 77. The choke is 2nd week of 77. A bit wobbly. The output transformer, 31st week of, well, 73 maybe? Maybe that's a replacement. Maybe that's a replacement unit. 31st week, that's definitely a 3. So that's interesting. Reverb transformer's got some wax on it, so let me just get my gentle persuader. Second week of 77. It's an early 77, isn't it? With a possible output transformer change. That's what we've got. Okay. Zoom you up and out. Looking good. Right. Place your bets now. Before we do anything else. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so originals, replacements, and if they are replacements, do we think they are high quality or low quality? What do you think? F&Ts, good job. Good job. That one's broken. I say good job. Let me give you an overhead shot. And finally, I'll go back to butcher this. Dathid Barad. Yeah, maybe. Says, loving your content. I'm really sorry. Very informative, and I enjoy seeing your builds. Cool, thank you. I have a speaker in poor condition from an old Marshall 4x10 basket weave. Wow. Do you have any recommendations on places to find recone kits? Code on the speaker shell is VBA, and on the paper cone it is NIB4HA. If you're in the UK, the only place that I recommend getting recones done, or parts for recones on vintage speakers, is a chap called Roy at RMJ Loudspeakers up north. The website is recones.com. So go have a chat with Roy. I don't know whether he'll sell you the parts, but he'll certainly recone he'll recone it for you if you need being. He's actually where I've sent the Gibson BR6 speaker off to, the field coil. So he's doing that for me. He is fantastic. He's done so much cool vintage stuff. He's got old stock cones. So if you need something rare, he might just have it on the shelf. Recones.com. Speak to Roy. He's absolutely incredible. He's the only place, and I've used them all, he's the only place that's never let me down, has always done an exceptional job. That's better, you can see now. So, just like I explained earlier in the video, here's our totem pole arrangement. You can see we've got the, although this is left to the other way around, red's input from your rectifier, positive of this one, positive of this one. So these two are the opposite way around. But you see, this one is back to front relative to the others, which is why I've seen quite a lot of inexperienced techs, unfortunately, install them the wrong way around, so they all line up, and then you get issues, right? So anyway, at least it's had F&Ts done. It doesn't look like these two were replaced. They often can, you know, they're under a lot of stress and they do start to cause noise. Unfortunately, this one, that tail resistor, not tail resistor, tail leg, God, don't shout at me. It's broken, so that's something to fix. That one's okay. See, these weren't silicon down, or at least foam tape, as I like to do. This one is making one hell of a noise, isn't it? Hey, listen to this. Okay, so we're going to have to fix that. Hopefully there's enough leg left on this cap that I can get that back in there. If not, it's going to be another one. At least they've been done. At least they've been done. Okay, so you may have already spotted it from above. We've got two preamp valves looking very white, which means they've gone. It's a shame, that's an old one. Lost its vacuum, look. Oh yeah, in the base. You can see the split in the glass there. Just there. One casualty. Let's check this one. Oh, that sounds crunchy. There's actually glass in the bottom of that socket. Oh, that's an old yellow print mallard. Now that is a shame. That one, same again, look. Crack around the bottom. That's one very expensive valve that's died. It's coming from, you probably can't see, but the crack from pin 2 all the way around to pin 8. No, yeah, pins 2 to 8. So excess stress on those pins. I wonder if somebody, it's what often happens if you're not careful trying to straighten them with pliers, or if you just shoved it in the socket. I guess while we're here then, we should check the others. Very nice Brimar. That one appears to be okay. V3, which should be a 1287, an ECC 81. Brimar 87, there it is. Made in England. Look, he's clearly tested them on some type of tester. Right. V2. Mallard ECC 81. That's the wrong valve for that position. But at least we can put that into V6. So we've still got a good one there. I'll remember that. Don't let me forget. And finally, V1. A 5751. Think of these as a low gain 12AX7. Right. Well, that's a shame, isn't it? That is a shame with those two preamp valves. Never mind, these things happen. Right, let's check the output valve, shall we? I'm enjoying doing it from this angle. So this is the one that's missing, and you can see the pin is still stuck in that base there. And he's got what looks to be the remaining 3 tongue soles in the rest of the amp. Yeah, short bottle tongue soles. Quite a nice valve, I do like them. I think they sound great. So we're going to have to get, ooh, that's a loose socket. We're going to have to get that pin out. We're going to have to fix our dodgy filter cap. That one as well. Fit a new set of valves, then we can fire this thing up and see what it's doing, take bias measurements, check voltages, all that kind of stuff. Zoom you out, there we go. So Vibrosonic Reverb, that's a visual inspection, and this is why, classic example of what I always say to you, before you fire an amp up on a bench that is known to have problems, do your visual inspection. You will find often some quite obvious issues and problems that need sorting. So question about this output transformer too. Why has that been changed? What's gone on there? At least it is a Fender unit, but it did get swapped at some point, didn't it? 31st week of 63. Now I did actually see something in the chassis. Bear with me. There is on the rear panel a sticker stamped 21st September 1983, curiously the same year as that output transformer, and it's been signed. I wonder if that is a factory sticker to say when that transformer was replaced. So maybe it was a warranty replacement. Wouldn't that be interesting? I've not seen that sticker before. I'm going to have to do some search on the internet to see if we can find any other examples of repair stickers from Fender, from the factory, or at least an authorised repair centre, because we don't know. It wouldn't have gone back to America being an export amp, so it was clearly done in the UK. But isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? So, quite a cool amp, really. So I need to go through, fix those issues before I can even fire it up, and then start doing my checks. I think he provided me with a set of 6L6s to plug in. Let's have a look. What have we got here? Sorry, yes. Gave me a box full of valves. What have we got in here? Bugera branded 6L6s. So at least we've got, only tested them as well. So at least we've got a set of valves to go in. But we are going to need 2 preamp valves. So I'll have to dig something out of my stash, so we can at least fire this thing up. This has taken an interesting twist in the story of this amplifier, because I'm just giving the cabinet an inspection and checking these things out. Now, one thing I do like to do is inspect the speakers. And most of the time you need to pull the speaker out so you can check the dust cover and all those things. But on the later Fenders, the baffle simply, well, the front part of the baffle with the grill cloth on, it's just Velcroed on, so you can pull it down. Now, when I did that, I discovered a name and an address and a telephone number. And it's a name I recognise because he's one of my customers. He's also my plumber, right? So I'm going to blur this out so you won't be able to see other, but I'll show you his first name because that's okay. But written on the inside of the cabinet is the previous owner's name. So I've just messaged him. Also, you can see the speaker's in nice condition. Very nice indeed. I've just messaged him and said, was this your old amp? He said, yes. Wow, good find. So it just goes to prove that things always come back around, and, you know, things never get lost in the ether to the end of the time. It always comes back. So what have we got? So my customer, my plumber, bought this from a local music shop to me, just in the local town, in 1995. Obviously it was second hand back then. Well, it was on sale for £365, which in today's money, 30 years later, is pretty much the pound has doubled or halved, whichever way you look at it. So 730 quid, and I'll put the US dollars equivalent on the screen now. Now, if you think 365 quid for an amp, that's pretty cheap. That's pretty cheap, or, you know, it's even 730 quid in today's money. It's pretty cheap. Now, twin reverbs were all the rage, and those secondhand were going for about 550, so nearly 200 quid more money. So when this one came up at 365, he did everything he could to get his hands on it because he really wanted one. And so he traded in another amp and 2 Strats to get this, and he said he thinks he traded those 3 items in plus some cash, I think about 115 quid at the time, so 230 quid in today's money, and got the amp. And he said it was the best amp he ever owned. His absolute favourite. 2 years after buying it, he took it to a local tech and had it recapped, which might be the work that we see going on today. I need to check the date codes on the caps, but I think these ones are actually newer than what would have been fitted back then. So maybe it's had a further recap since. But yeah, he had this amp, and he eventually sold it in 2006. So since 2006, it went off out into the world, and then 19 years later, it's now come back for us to look at. So isn't that cool? Isn't that a great story? So we don't know whether he sold it to the current customer, he can't remember, or whether, you know, it's been through various hands over the years, but these things always come back around. It's a cool part of its story. So there you go. It was found in a local guitar shop to the Rift workshop back in 1995. Owned it for 10, 11 years and eventually sold it on. He did say, however, that when he had it, it didn't have the EV in it. It had an eminence speaker in it, which obviously it does not now. So clearly, since he moved it on, somebody's gone and found one of these and fitted that themselves. Which is, again, that's a cool part of the story. Someone cared enough to try and put the correct factory style speaker in, which you can't really put your nose up at, can you? But there you go. Really cool history in the amp. I've now got to go to its current customer, tell him what I found, what I need to do, and where we're going to go from there. I never thought I'd get to the age where I've got a favourite brown jumper, but I'm getting loads of wear out of this. It's super comfy, it's nice and warm in here. Absolutely loving it. Speaking of keeping warm, a lot of you have mentioned that sometimes you can hear a low hum in the background. It is the workshop heater. This time of year, it's always on. It's always on in the summer as well, because it's also the aircon. So not much I can do about it. I've tried EQing it out, but it always seems to be there sometimes. Not much I can do about it. There's not a high pass filter on these microphones, so it's difficult. I do apologise. But as always, please give this video a thumbs up, or your comments and questions down below. We're nearly at 5,500 subscribers, which is just insane. I don't know what to say. It's incredible. I mean, when I got to 1,000, it was just brilliant. So anything over that, I can't thank you enough. If you're feeling super generous and you want to get your name in these scrolly credits, please think about joining the channel, and I will catch you all at the next one.